Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm April Rabley, the Student Assistance Counselor at the high school, and I want to thank you for joining us for tonight's program, More Than Sad. This program was designed to help teach parents how to recognize signs of depression and other mental health problems, initiate a conversation about mental health with their child, and to get help. I'm happy to introduce this evening's speaker, Ms. Emily Shimko, who's the Education Chair of the Western Pennsylvania chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And Emily is also a graduate of North Hills High School. So thanks, Emily.
Thank you, April. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. As April said, we're going to go through a presentation tonight called More Than Sad. I'm going to share my screen here in just a moment, and I'll probably turn my video off because I do show a couple of videos throughout this presentation, so having my face might get a little distracting in there. Bear with me for 1 second. I'm using my husband's computer, so I'm hoping that everything works the way that it's supposed to. So you should be seeing my PowerPoint screen right now. We are going to, like I said, go through this presentation tonight. There is both PowerPoint as well as videos to view throughout this. If you have questions, you're free to hold them until the end. You are also more than welcome to interrupt me at any point in time, and I can answer a question like on the spot. Sorry, this slideshow doesn't seem like it's wanting to start for me. Give me 1 moment. I'm going to stop sharing. So if you do have questions along the way, feel free to interrupt me or to hold them to the end. You can put them in the chat, but I'll be honest with you, when I'm presenting by myself, I don't always notice the chat. So if you have something that is really timely and you want answered on the spot, I would encourage you just to unmute and ask that question or raise your hand with the little raise hand button at the bottom. If not, like I said, feel free to ask anything when we get to the end. I'm going to try this screen share again and hope that it works. Looks like you're all seeing my screen now. So like I said, I'm going to turn my video off for most of the presentation, especially when we're watching the videos. So the presentation that we're looking at tonight, again, is called More Than Sad. This is a presentation specifically for parents. We actually have 2 other versions of this presentation, one that's for educators and one that is also for teens. The longer video that you're going to see tonight is what we actually show teenagers, and then we do a guided discussion with them. So this is going to focus on teen depression as well as teen suicide. These can both be very sensitive topics. So if you do need to take a break at any time during this, please do that for yourself. If it's starting to get late and you have another commitment and you just need to leave the presentation early, that's okay too. If you are signing off, I would just ask that you put a chat, like a message in the chat that just says, I'm signing off, I need to take care of my kids or whatever, just so that I know that you're okay and you weren't finding any of the information particularly activating here tonight.
Emily, this will be recorded as well.
Okay.
And posted so everyone can go back and watch if that happens.
Okay, thank you. So as we begin this presentation, I do want to go over a little bit about how we talk about suicide. How we talk and the terminology that we use is really important. We want to make sure that we're modeling appropriate behavior so that we don't perpetuate the stigma of suicide or mental health conditions. So one of the phrases that we encourage people to avoid is committed suicide. And I know this is, a common phrase to use. And it was a phrase that I even used until I had been educated around why not to. So the phrase committed suicide can have a negative connotation. It can also imply criminality. So instead, we encourage people to say died by suicide, ended his or her life, or killed him or herself. Additionally, when we talk about suicide attempts, we want to avoid referring to suicide attempts as failed or successful. This is really just unnecessary, and these words imply judgment. So instead, we encourage the use of phrases such as suicide attempt or death by suicide. The goal here is, again, to reduce stigma and encourage help-seeking behaviors. Looking at the outline for tonight and the goals for the participants, we want to learn about teen depression and suicide risk. We'll teach you to identify the warning signs and risk factors for suicide in teens. We'll look at the role of treatment in reducing risk, as well as ways to start a conversation with your child about depression and suicide. As I go through this presentation, you'll see that I often make this reference of your child, but also know that there may be times where that extends past your own children. You may have situations where a friend of your child's is suffering and you notice that, or your child may come to you and approach you about a friend of theirs, or you may have other family members that are teens in your life. So again, as we frame this around your child, we can use these skills that we learn here tonight with anyone in our lives. Even if it's an adult, some of the stuff that we talk about here tonight will apply. The last thing before we really start diving into the meat of the presentation is some key terms to go over. When you hear the term suicidal ideation, it simply refers to any thoughts of suicide. Ideation can be expressed as suicide behaviors. Suicide behaviors are any sort of acts related to suicide, including preparatory acts, as well as suicide attempts and deaths. Looking at non-suicidal self-injuries, not all self-injuries are suicidal behaviors. So this would be a self-injury with not an intent to die. Injurious acts without an intent to die include cutting, burning, and scratching. On the other hand, we have suicide attempts. When someone makes a suicide attempt, there is an intent to die. These attempts may or may not result in physical injury, but the intent was there. And then finally, a suicide is defined as a self-directed, injurious behavior with the intent to die that results in death. We're going to get started by looking at the overall scope of the problem of suicide. The numbers that we're looking at right here are from 2019. The data that we present on suicide comes from the Centers for Disease Control, and their data is always a year behind when it comes to mortality data. So this December, we'll get the suicide data from 2020. We got the 2019 data at the end of this past year, usually about end of December, right around Christmas time, we get this. Looking at 2019's data, a total of 47,511 suicide deaths were reported. That works out to a suicide rate of 13.93, meaning that about 13 suicides were reported for every 100,000 people in the country. At that rate, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in the population overall. One piece of promising news from the 2019 data is that we actually did see a drop in the overall number of suicides. It has been the 10th leading cause of death for quite some time, and it did remain in that spot, but we did see for the first time in quite a while an actual decrease in those numbers. We also did see, which has been consistent, over half of all reported suicides were by firearm. Looking then at younger individuals between the ages of 10 and 24 years old, almost 6,500 reported deaths occur in 2019. So this age demographic represented about 13.6% of all suicides in the year 2019. So the suicide rate in this age group is 10.22 per 100,000. For ages 10 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death. This follows unintentional injuries, which is predominantly motor vehicle crashes. So with that being said, it is important to note that, suicide deaths are less frequent among this group. However, they are a leading cause of death, mostly because death is so rare in this age population. And as I gave you these statistics, you notice that this word reported was used and even italicized. It's important to see that that is highlighted because suicides have historically been underreported, largely due to the stigma that surrounds suicide will make families hesitant to classify a death as suicide. It can also be difficult for medical examiners to determine the cause of death in some situations. This graph here is showing suicide rates across the lifespan. So down here on our horizontal axis, we have ages, and then the number here represents suicides per 100,000. So we can see that suicide under the age of 10 is quite rare, and that suicide rates increase more dramatically during adolescence and early adulthood. We see this increase more than any other time in the life cycle. In particular, we're seeing really dramatic rises between after the age of 12 up to 22. However, suicide rates for adolescents and young adults are clearly significantly lower than those for people in midlife and outer ages. Another graph here, this one's actually a little bit easier to see in the Zoom environment than in person. The age group that we're focusing on is this lighter blue right here, but you'll see, where we're kind of looking at the most dramatic increases is going to be for 45 to 64-year-olds, which is this darker blue line up here at the top. There's been a slight increase in the suicide rate for individuals under the age of 20 in the past 15 years. It's also important to note that because deaths by suicide in this age group are relatively uncommon, small changes in the number will have a marked difference in that rate. And we also can see down here in yellow, the age of 15 and under. This one is by far the lowest incidence rate. However, the loss of a young person under the age of 15 can have a really large impact on a school, on a community, and can also put other children at risk. And that's really where this presentation can help. There's a lot of room for intervention within this age group, and participating in our presentation tonight is one way for you to take action. All right, last graph here. This one is going to show a comparison between suicide rates for males between the ages of 10 and 24, the blue bars, and for females of the same age range in yellow. If we look down here at the age of 12, we can see that there's little difference between the suicide rates for boys and girls. However, as we continue through the ages here, when we get out 18 and older, we're seeing that the boys rate is 5 times higher than the girls. So for males, we're seeing 15 suicides per 100,000, and for females, 3 per 100,000. This difference between sexes will remain through young adulthood and peak at age 22, when the male suicide rate is more than 6 times the female suicide rate. There's several reasons for differences between these suicide rates and genders. What we know so far is that it's just more culturally acceptable for females to seek help. We also see differences between the sexes in traits like aggression and impulsivity that are thought to contribute to this. And males also tend to choose more lethal methods such as firearms. When we look at suicide rates, again, we're staying in this 10 to 24 age range, broken down by ethnicity. American Indian, Alaska Native, and white youths both have suicide rates above the national average. We would see similar demographics in older age groups as well, particularly when we look at white individuals. We've concentrated our first slides there on suicide deaths. However, when we only look at deaths, we really miss the bigger picture. The Centers for Disease Control also gathers hospital admission data for non-fatal injuries. For young people, this data tells us that there's an estimated 100 to 200 suicide attempts that require medical attention for every reported death by suicide. So basically, for every suicide death, between 100 and 200 others will attempt. Approximately 2.5% of youth in grades 9 through 12 reported making a suicide attempt that required treatment by a doctor or nurse. And we only have this data for individuals who are admitted into medical hospitals for self-inflicted injuries. So this number is rather conservative because many suicide attempts do not require medical attention. We're seeing, this very large number of attempts compared to deaths, and youth are more likely to survive attempts because compared to other age groups in general, youth will live with others who can rescue them and bring help. They tend to have healthier bodies, and they also generally have less access to lethal means. But the attempts are opportunities to intervene and help people get healthy. Looking at some data from the National Youth Risk Behavior Survey, this survey monitors health risk behaviors that contribute to leading causes of death, disability, and social problems among youth and adults in the United States. This survey is conducted every 2 years during the spring semester and provides data representative of 9th through 12th grade students in public and private schools throughout the United States. According to the most recent Youth Behavioral Risk Survey, which was conducted in 2019, we learned that 18.8% of American high school students report that they have seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. 15.7% report having made a plan, and 8.9% report having made a suicide attempt in the prior year. When we hear a young person speak of wanting to take their life or indicate that they're thinking about suicide, we must take it seriously every time. Some may think that teens talk of suicide for attention, but it is important to take all threats of suicide seriously until the teen is seen by a medical health provider. We're going to switch gears a little bit here now that we've gotten some statistics underway, and talk about some of the risk factors that are present and increases a person's risk for suicide. The main risk factors can be grouped into 3 categories: health factors, historical factors, and environmental factors. And these are common risk factors for any sort of health condition as far as kind of the buckets that they go into. Someone may be at higher risk for a heart attack because they have high blood pressure as well as a family history, and maybe they smoke. So same kind of thing here. We'll look at factors about an individual's health, their family and personal history, as well as their environment, things that are kind of outside of their bodies that increase the risk. So research has shown that the majority of those who die by suicide across the lifespan have a treatable mental health condition at the time of their death. As with other health conditions, early identification and treatment can save lives. Recent research has shown that as is the case with what we know about those who attempt suicide at all ages, teens who attempt suicide do so as a result of many factors. That said, teens may have lower rates of mental illness than people attempt later in life. Suicide risk in teens is most clearly linked to mental health conditions, which can occur together. This can further increase risk. Some of the most common mental health conditions that we see associated with suicide include major depressive disorder, conduct disorder, substance use disorders, eating disorders, generalized anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. We also have disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, which is a new diagnosis in the DSM-5, characterized by extreme irritability, anger outbursts, and inhibited self-control in youth ages 6 to 18. Youth with this diagnosis also have a heightened risk for suicide. A common environmental factor that people may associate with suicide is bullying, but the relationship between bullying and suicide is quite complex. When other risk factors are present, being bullied can be a precipitating stressor that can increase risk even further. Research indicates that persistent bullying can lead to or worsen feelings of isolation, rejection, exclusion, and despair, as well as to depression and anxiety, which can contribute to suicidal behavior. Bullying behavior also indicates an underlying risk in the bully. Any involvement with bullying behavior, either as the bully or as the victim, is a stressor which may significantly contribute to feelings of helplessness or hopelessness that raise the risk of suicide in teens. That being said, suicide is not a natural response or a reasonable solution to bullying. Bullying is just one factor, but does not directly result in suicide, and suggesting that it is the case could increase contagion risk. It is important to note that the large majority of people who experience bullying do not become suicidal. Social media is another big area of conversation these days around suicide. The research in this area is emerging, and social media continues to evolve at a rapid rate. Some people utilize social media with a mixture of positive and negative effects. For young people with risk factors for suicide, including depression, anxiety disorders, low self-esteem, or extreme interpersonal sensitivity, social media use can have negative effects on their mental health. It's also important to note that young people may use social media to reach out for help or to indicate their distress behaviorally or verbally. For example, suddenly disconnecting from social networks via social media, making statements on social media indicating a desire for suicide, to die, or to escape pain, or even disclosures about gaining access to means are all things that we can look out for on social media. Just like we encourage young people to alert adults if they notice or hear things being said, they should also be encouraged to notify an adult if they are concerned about a peer's social media posts. Heavy use of more than several hours per day is not recommended. Social media utilization should ideally be limited in quantity and approaches. Some people astutely take long breaks from social media for their mental health because they have learned that this is an important part of their overall strategy. Now I have just a short video clip to play of AFSP's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Christine Moutier. She's going to talk about the risk factors and warning signs that contribute to suicide risk. All right, I'm gonna keep trying this and do the best that we can. Again, I apologize for my tech difficulties. Technology is great until it fails us, right? All right, so we did get through, fortunately, most of Dr. Moutier's video there, and the high points were indicated in the text there as well. And I'm going to elaborate on some of this throughout the presentation and can get you some more information for anything that we may have missed. But you know, some of the high points that she talked about here were these warning signs for suicide risk. So really some things that would indicate to us that a teen or really anyone is struggling and that a suicide attempt may be imminent. So things like changes in their behavior, really thinking about what's their normal baseline behavior. Are we seeing them taking more risks? Are we seeing that they are withdrawing from activities? Are we seeing changes in their grades? Things like changes in their moods. Are they easily becoming angered? Do we see increases in anxiety? Are they sleeping too little or sleeping too much? And then really just expressing thoughts of ending their life. And again, I'm going to go a little bit more into these pieces on the next few slides. As far as identifying at-risk teens, mental health symptoms are often misinterpreted. We may think about some kind of normal mood swings for adolescents, as well as laziness, poor attitudes, or immaturity. That being said, these perceptions that adults have of many of them may inhibit adolescents from seeking help, which is why it's important to talk of mental illness or suicide seriously. When you notice a change, it never hurts to have a conversation with your child about what you're seeing. You may want to speak with their doctor about the changes you're seeing as well. The risk factors that we have discussed can be subtle to detect, and having lots of risk factors doesn't necessarily mean that someone is having thoughts of suicide. For example, high cholesterol and heart disease may run in your family, yet that does not mean that you have heart disease or that you're currently having a heart attack. Warning signs are observable signs that someone may be at this more imminent risk. Warning signs are typically viewed in 3 different ways: their talk, their behavior, and their mood. Sometimes we'll hear things that people say. We should listen for statements such as, "I should just kill myself," "I've got no reason to live," "Everyone would be better off without me," "There's no way out of this," "I can't live like this anymore," "I can't take this pain anymore." Don't assume that they are joking. Always start the conversation. A person's suicide risk is greater if a behavior is new or is increased, especially if it's related to a painful event, loss, or change. Some things that we want to look out for include increased alcohol or drug use, online searches for suicide methods, acting recklessly, such as driving too fast, risky sexual behaviors, etc., withdrawing from their usual activities, isolating from family and friends, such as going silent on social media, like we talked about before. If they are someone that's usually very active on social media, if we're seeing that they have kind of disappeared from those platforms. Individuals in distress can develop insomnia or can actually sleep more, appearing to hibernate. A sudden change in either direction is something to take notice of. Saying goodbye or giving away prized possessions is also a behavior we do not want to ignore. Increased aggression and picking fights is another warning sign that is often missed. If you have a teen who is normally easygoing and peaceful and all of a sudden becomes aggressive and violent, it's time to take notice. Again, also just really thinking about what's uncharacteristic. Another indication that someone could be at risk for suicide is sudden changes in their moods. We want to watch for depression, lethargy, anxiety, loss of interest, increased irritability, shame, humiliation, or extreme embarrassment, agitation, and rage. Sudden unexplained happiness can also be worrisome because this can indicate that the individual has decided on a plan and is relieved that they will no longer be in pain. When we're seeing any of these warning signs, again, it's time to start a conversation. And we all, have those ups and downs in our daily lives. So again, we're looking for things that are uncharacteristic and tend to linger. All right, so everyone cross your fingers here. This is the longer film for the presentation. This provides an overview of mental health conditions in teens. So we're gonna see this 25-minute film. The film is really showing an ideal situation. So these are 4 teens who are struggling with a mental health disorder, and they do seek help and get treatment. and again, it is this ideal kind of scenario. Many times things do not work out quite so well, or students may struggle in the early onset to get help. This, like I said before, is we have this version for teens that we may do in the future. This is the same video that we would show them, and then we have a guided discussion. But for today, we're going to hopefully just watch this in a way that everyone can hear, and then break down a few of the key points. There we go.
But in common is that each one was changed by depression.
Now?
It took away their self-confidence, and while they were depressed, none of them were enjoying their lives. Depression can cause you to have low energy, lose interest in things you used to enjoy. It can make it hard to get along with people. When you're depressed, it can be difficult to concentrate, to be positive, or to express how you're thinking and feeling. You might get irritated easily or find yourself criticizing other people or yourself. Depression that has not been treated can affect different people in different ways. Some depressed people may use alcohol or illegal drugs as a way to deal with depression. Others may become suicidal. If you recognize any signs of depression in yourself or a friend, please follow the advice at the end of this film. Remember, depression is an illness. It can be treated to change a sad, colorless, unhappy life into one with energy and enjoyment. Lana lives with her mother. Until a few months ago, Lana was popular. She had some good friends, she liked school, and her grades were pretty good. She and her mother were really close and told each other everything. Then Lana began to feel sick. She didn't have a fever, but she was tired and had no energy and wanted to sleep all the time. Her pediatrician did lots of tests, but they were normal. But Lana knew something was wrong.
Roosevelt Mental Health Center.
Hi, I'm calling about my daughter. She's 14 and I'm really worried about her. She's not acting like herself. She's not eating. She spends most of the day in bed. She has fallen behind in school and she cries all the time. I know there's something wrong, but I don't know what to do.
How long have you been noticing this change in your daughter?
Well, the other day I went up to her room and she didn't answer. Lana? She was just there, staring. Are you sleeping? It's the middle of the day. Is everything all right?
Yeah, I'm just tired.
Your teacher, she said you've been missing school. And when you do show up, you often seem unprepared. Lana, that's so unlike you. What's going on? You've always been such a good student. Lana, what's the matter? Baby, can you talk to me? You want to get up? Come down, have something to eat with me?
Stop, just stop.
You know what? You need to snap out of it. Stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Sometimes parents don't know what to do or how to help when you're depressed. They may misread the situation and say or do things that aren't helpful. Usually it's out of concern or fear.
Your mother told me that she's worried. She said that she tries to talk to you, but when she does, you don't say anything. What's going on?
I don't know. I just feel bad. She thinks I'm lazy. She's right. I am lazy. All I want to do is stay in bed. It's hard to pay attention in class. I can't do work. And my mom already thinks that I don't care about my future, but I care. I just can't deal.
Your mom told me that you stopped calling your friends.
I just don't feel like talking to anyone. When I'm with my friends, it's like I'm not even there. They probably think I'm lame. I don't know.
Lana has clear signs of depression. She has no energy. She can't concentrate, and some days she doesn't even go to school. When her mother gets tired and criticizes her, Lana cries and blames herself. These are all signs that Lana is depressed.
You know, Lana, when people who are depressed lie around, it gives them too much time to think negative thoughts, which only makes their depression worse. You know, sometimes the best way to stop the negative thoughts is to do something. What do you think you can do when you're feeling stuck like this?
Maybe I can call a friend.
Good. And if your friend says, hey, let's do something, you know, why don't you push yourself to say yes?
Okay, I'll try.
After being in therapy for 6 weeks, Lana was getting better. She was back in school and seeing friends. But each day was a struggle. She still lacked confidence and didn't enjoy herself as much as she used to. So Lana's family doctor added medication to therapy to help get her back to where she was before her depression. There are chemicals in the brain that help the different parts of the brain communicate with each other. If the chemicals get out of balance, this communication can break down and lead to depression. Depressed brains show a decrease in serotonin transporter levels in specific areas of the brain. Medication works to reset the brain's chemistry and is generally used for 6 to 12 months. Ray is very independent, but lately he's been feeling really stressed out. He's always been a worrier, but not like this. When he tries to study, he can't concentrate on the material because he worries about the outcome. Then he freaks out.
Hey, Ray. Congrats on student council, man.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yo, Ray, what time's the game on Saturday?
9 a.m. away game.
Dude, I hear coach is gonna start you.
Yeah, no, he told me. I've been trying to stay cool about it.
Man, that history exam's gonna kill me tomorrow.
I know, I've been studying.
Yeah, like you gotta worry.
Yeah, right.
Take my test from me, please.
I'll let you, man.
All right, man.
City Hospital Mental Health Clinic.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ray, and I'm a junior at Willis High.
Hi, Ray. What's going on?
I'm calling because I can't stop worrying about things that I don't need to worry about. I don't know, I felt weird and like something was wrong. I decided that I needed to speak to someone.
I'm glad you called. Let me put you through to someone here. Hi, Ray. I'm Ruth. I work here at the clinic.
What's going on?
I was worried because I had this big test, and I always do okay on tests, but I don't know, last night I was just so scared that I couldn't even bring myself to do any work. I knew that I had to study, but I just couldn't concentrate. I just stared at my books. My stomach hurt so much that I just had to lie down. Before I knew it, it was already 3 a.m. in the morning. Everyone thinks that I'm so perfect and that it all comes easy for me, but it doesn't. I worry about everything. I worry about school stuff. I worry about tests. I worry about games. It really does get me down.
Ray, it's good that you called.
That was the right thing to do. How do you feel now?
Wow, yeah, I felt better just talking about it. So, what do I do now? Do I just call you?
Okay, why don't you talk to your family and then you can come see me later this week? How about Friday at 5?
Friday at 5. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Ray shows signs of an abnormal degree of anxiety. Even though he knows he always does well, when he has a test, he feels anxious and afraid. His mind gets frozen. Sometimes this heightened degree of anxiety can lead to depression. The feeling of fear is so great that all Ray can do is cry or feel really sick. When Ray experiences anxiety, the fear takes over his mind. Some people call that psychological pain. It's just as bad as physical pain. Ray's therapist taught him to watch for signs when his anxiety was getting worse, like when he feels his heart racing or shortness of breath. The therapist gave him some tools to help manage his anxiety, like some breathing exercises that helped him calm down and get back in control. Jake likes being part of a crowd that hangs out together, but lately he's been feeling like everybody's in his business. At home, at school, even his friends are on his back. He feels like he's always on edge.
Miss Robinson, can we talk to you for a second?
Yeah, sure. Come on in, fellas.
So, yeah, this past weekend we went to this party with Jake. You know how Jake is. He can be chill and really cool. But sometimes, you say something to him and he takes it the complete wrong way.
So we went to this party and we were just walking there and talking about stuff.
But Jake wasn't talking to any of us. And then he picks up this bottle and smashes it on the concrete.
Yeah, and then we got to this party and he just got angry over nothing.
And then we left because we were heading to CJ's house. But she was like, you can't bring Jake. And I had to tell him that he couldn't come.
Yeah, he got really mad. But he just stared us down. He didn't say anything to us when we left. So, we just wanted to make sure everything was cool.
You guys did the right thing coming by here today. I really appreciate it. Thanks. You guys should probably get back to class, but I'll look into it, okay? Thanks. Hi, Jim. This is Dave from George Washington. Hey, listen, a group of students came into my office this morning to talk about a friend of theirs who's also a student here. They've noticed that he's been getting angry for no obvious reason, and they think he's changed. I'd like to get him to come see you. If he agrees, will you see him?
Jake, you said Mr. Harrison spoke to you and your family about coming in to talk to someone. I know that must have been a difficult decision for you to make. Why don't you tell me what's going on?
I know my friends talked to Mr. Harrison about what happened at the party, and they probably told him that I was the one who did something and that I was the problem, and it was them.
Well, why don't you tell me what happened and we'll figure it out?
We were just hanging out, and then they start acting like a bunch of total jerks. I mean, they're acting like everything they do is right and everything that I do is wrong. I'm just standing out on the deck, and Claire falls into me and spills beer on me. Watch it. What's your problem?
Hey, why are you being such a jerk, man?
Yeah, what's your problem?
You are.
You're not being funny, Jake.
She fell into me, and everyone's acting like I did something wrong. It really pissed me off.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yes. It's all gone.
No more beer left, man.
Yes.
Are you guys serious?
Yeah, we're serious.
And then they lie and say that the beer is all gone, and they're acting like I'm out of control, and it gets me really mad. Hey, you guys just gonna leave me here?
Yeah, we'll call you.
Just go home, man.
Get some sleep.
Just go home.
I mean, you're totally out of control. We can't handle this anymore.
You're just gonna ditch me? And then they ditch me. They just ditch me. They leave me there, and I'm like, fine, I don't need you. Forget you guys. Go to hell.
these guys are your friends?
Yeah. They don't get me. I mean, they can be total jerks sometimes. It's not just that. It's even at home, I feel like everyone's giving me a hard time, and I know I've been getting mad a lot, and I didn't used to be that way, and now I'm like that all the time, and it's just little things that make me lose it.
Well, why don't you tell me what has changed?
Jake easily loses his temper, especially if he's been drinking alcohol. His outbursts were causing his friends to turn away from him when he really wanted to be around them. Even though Jake knew drinking alcohol was illegal, he thought alcohol would make him feel better. But it didn't. It only made things worse. Losing your temper easily and more often, along with using alcohol to feel better, can be signs of depression. Jake's therapist helped him find ways to avoid situations where he'd be tempted to drink and to say no when there was alcohol around. When Jake's depression did not seem to be lifting after a few months of therapy, his doctor suggested that Jake take an antidepressant. Both the medication and therapy helped Jake. He found that he did better without alcohol and that little things didn't bother him so much anymore. His sense of humor came back, and he could laugh at himself instead of always feeling that people were picking on him. Delia lives with her grandmother in the country. She's never been very confident, and when she was younger, girls used to make fun of her. She's shy. It's hard for her to talk to people. She has a couple of friends at school, but she spends most of her time alone on her computer.
Dr. Allen's office.
Yes, hello. This is Dr. Green calling from Four Corners Pediatric. I'd like to refer one of my patients to you, Delia Simmons. She's here with her grandmother because she's had bad stomach aches. She says that she's feeling tired, she refuses to go to school, she's not hanging out with other kids, and she says she's feeling sad. So there may be an emotional component in all of this. I'd like her to meet with someone. Oh, it's going to be a bit of a trip for them, so later in the afternoon might be better.
Delia, your grandmother says you haven't been going to school. Did something happen?
No.
You're not feeling well?
No, I'm sick.
How so?
Just feel bad.
Maybe I'll be able to help you.
You can't.
Talking might make you feel better.
It's embarrassing and stupid.
Well, I'm not going to laugh, and there's nothing you can say that will surprise me.
So there's this boy, Alex. These girls in my class, they found out I had a crush on him. Those girls, started sending me emails. Like it was from Alex. He liked me. It was so stupid. But I got those emails, and I really thought it was from him. So I wrote him stuff about myself. Personal stuff. And then I sent an email that was really personal. And then I sent a picture of myself. And those girls sent my email to everyone in school. Everyone knew about it. I started getting emails from everyone in school saying, "Did you really think Alex would like you?" How could I have believed it? Those girls, they made the whole thing up. There's no way I can go back to school. I just want to disappear.
I'm sorry this happened. Did you tell anyone else about it?
No. And I really don't want to tell my grandmother. She worries enough about me. She has no idea how much I'm picked on at school. I have no one to hang out with. The other day, everyone was just looking and laughing at me. I never want to go back to school. Ever.
I know this is very hard for you, and you are doing a great job with talking about it. I just think if we work together, we'll be able to find a way that is manageable for you, and it'll make you feel better.
For a long time, Delia has been feeling sad, isolated, and unaccepted by her peers. This recent humiliation has led her to become more depressed, and that makes it hard for her to think about how to make positive changes in her life. Delia started meeting her therapist once a week to figure out what she can do about her situation. With the help of her therapist, Delia started to feel less bothered by the girls in her school and learned how to ignore them. Delia joined an exercise program at the local community center and started making some new friends there. Once she started exercising, her physical health and outlook improved, and she began to feel better about herself. For someone like Delia, another option might be to change schools, if that's available, to give her a fresh start as she makes positive changes in her life. Jake really improved once he was on medication, and along with therapy, he started to gain control over his emotions. With his anger under control, he was able to interact with his teachers, peers, and family members more positively. Ray worked hard with his therapist, and like a lot of anxious kids, he was very dedicated to improving his situation, and he did well. He still felt overwhelmed in certain circumstances, but he learned how to bring those moods under control. The trick he found worked best for him was a breathing exercise, and over time, the worrying attacks happened less and less often. Lana saw a therapist weekly and stayed on medication for 6 months. She's been doing well in school again and started getting back into things she used to enjoy. There are times she still feels a bit down, but she has learned how to recognize the triggers of depression in herself, and she's learned what she can do to keep it at bay. If you think you're going through depression, you're not alone, and you can feel better. In any given year, in a high school of 1,000 students, 75 girls and 50 boys will be diagnosed with depression. Only 1 out of 3 of them will eventually receive treatment for their depression. You can't do this by yourself, and you don't have to. Talk to someone who knows about depression and can help you. Your parent, a school counselor, your doctor, or an adult you trust. Tell them, I need help. If you recognize signs of depression in a friend, tell them about what you've learned and encourage them to seek help. Depression is a medical illness. Depression can be treated. Get help if you think you or a friend are in trouble, and you can save a life. For help, write down this number, 1-800-273-TALK.
All right, we're gonna get back into the presentation here in just a moment, and we'll do a quick debrief on the video. As I said, they were really best case scenarios. We could see that each of those teens had a different struggle, and they took some time, but eventually we did see the help-seeking behaviors and the help-promoting behaviors by the adults in their lives. All right, so hopefully everyone's back on my screen right now, and we should hopefully, fingers crossed, get through this without any other technical difficulties. So some of the key points that we were able to see in the presentation is that depression is a common problem that causes significant distress and disruption in teens' lives. Depression is an illness, not a character weakness, and not something that people can change at will. Depression may develop after stressful life experiences, but can occur in any teen. Depression doesn't go away on its own. If left untreated, depression may lead to serious consequences, including suicide. Treatment for depression is available and treatment works. The last, statement that I made was that treatment works. Unfortunately, research shows us that 2 out of 3 teens with depression don't get treatment. Although treatment varies by person, condition, and severity level, teens who are showing signs of depression can show improvement within 4 to 6 weeks when receiving psychotherapy or talk therapy. For others, the combination of talk therapy and medications can make a significant difference. Many teens benefit tremendously when the family engages in therapy together for a period of time. Treatment can really make all the difference in short and long-term symptom reduction and overall health. Treatment for depression can vary both in its length and nature. For some, depression is an episode from which they will recover, though episodes can reoccur and treatment will be in response to the symptoms during each episode. For others, depression may involve multiple episodes and will be addressed more like a chronic illness, such as diabetes. In these instances, it may be recommended that treatment continue to help to prevent problems in functioning. This is why it's important to have depressive symptoms evaluated by a trained professional so that treatment can address the core health problem as effectively as possible. Just like other chronic health conditions, healthy habits can alleviate some of the symptoms of a mental health condition as well. Things like exercise, yoga, breathing exercises, a regular sleep schedule, and a healthy diet can improve moods and relieve anxiety and stress. Creating these healthy habits as a family will benefit everyone. Seeing a mental health professional can be a very critical part of treatment. Make sure that your child feels like he or she can talk to the professional. If it's not a good fit, try another. We also want to make sure that the mental health professional has the information you have about your child's behavior, especially about thoughts of suicide. You want to be sure to report any unusual behaviors and report any suicidal thoughts or substance use. Be vigilant if medication is started or if there's a change in existing medications. Check in with your child during these key times to make sure that any changes in behavior are noted and brought to the healthcare professional's attention when appropriate. Stay in contact with the school counselor as appropriate, and most importantly, be patient with your child. As we discussed earlier, although treatment is effective in most cases, these common barriers can get in the way, leading to only 1/3 of teens experiencing a mental health crisis getting the help they need. Sometimes the symptoms aren't recognized as signs of a possible health condition and are dismissed, even by the person experiencing them. Fear of what treatment may involve can also keep those who are struggling from reaching out for help. An overall sense of despair or hopelessness, both symptoms of depression, can lead someone to not reach out for help. We saw this with Lana in the film. They may not believe that there is help or that they can be helped. When help seeking is not seen as a sign of strength, those who are struggling often don't reach out for help. We can create a culture within our schools and society that makes reaching out for help socially acceptable and truly a sign of strength. When help seeking is seen as weakness, mental health conditions are misunderstood, mocked, or demonized in the media. In Delia's case, like many teens, especially during times when they feel distressed, they are simply too embarrassed to reach out for help. Teens generally believe that adults would understand, so they don't reach out for help. And teens often don't have means or access to resources to seek help for themselves. They may not be able to afford treatment without their parents' contribution or have no means of transportation to access treatment. There are many things that you can do to help your child stay safe and help reduce the risk of suicide. Make sure your child receives mental health care when they need help. Depression and other mental health conditions can be managed with a minimal effect on your child's life. Strong connection to families, friends, and the community also plays a key role. Maintain a safe and supportive home where it is always okay to reach out for help. Limit access to lethal means as well. Nurture problem solving and good communication skills. Treat disappointments as learning opportunities. Don't be afraid to ask your child about their mental health. Ask them about how they feel in response to different events and model expressing emotions. For example, you might say, "I felt sad too when that happened," in response to a sad event. It is also important to reduce access to lethal means. For example, 51% of suicide completions occur via firearm. Temporarily removing access to guns in the home can limit your child's ability to use it as a means of suicide in times of intense emotional crisis. Increasing awareness of the signs of depression in teens can lead to earlier treatment as well as increased support. Because depression can sometimes be a recurring or chronic illness, having an early conversation about depression can help set the stage to address future difficulties should they occur. Think about diabetes, for example. Would we wait until a loved one was in a diabetic coma before getting treatment? Probably not. The earlier that issues with blood sugar are addressed, the less likely that disease would become life-threatening. Parents also need to show that they believe it is okay to ask for help for themselves. It is hard for a teen to believe that help is available or appropriate if their parent doesn't believe it. I'm going to skip over that second video there, as I'm really going to cover most of it in the slides, and I'll elaborate a little bit on some of these slides where Dr. Moutier would have came in. So how to reach out. If you suspect that your child may be struggling, or anyone else, like I said, these tips apply to any child in your life as well as any adult in your life. If we're concerned about someone, we want to talk to them in private. We want to listen to their story without judgment. We want to express concern and caring. We can also ask directly about suicide in a calm, non-judgmental way. It's actually very smart to say directly, "Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about hurting yourself?" Sometimes people are concerned that if they ask that question, they're going to put it in someone's head when they weren't thinking about suicide. However, our research really does not indicate that that is the situation. You're not going to put it into someone's head. We want to reassure them that help is available and take them for a mental health assessment. We've talked about a lot of things this evening, and you've seen a lot of risk factors and warning signs. One of the most important pieces of advice I can give you is to trust your gut. You know, we've talked about changes in talk, behavior, and mood. We really want to trust our instincts. So if you're wondering if your child or someone in your life is experiencing depression or anxiety, it's a sure sign that you should start a conversation and let them know that you're concerned. If you notice something, do not wait for your child to reach out or the school to contact you. Be proactive. And the same goes for all of you. If you're having suicidal thoughts, that's a sure sign that you should seek help. If you've reached out before and didn't get the response you were looking for, don't give up. Reach out again. The first time your child may not be receptive, so keep trying. We also, as I say, to apply this to more than just your own child, there's often times where people think that maybe someone else has noticed it. So not really assuming that, if it's your child's friend, don't assume that they are expressing the same behaviors in front of their parents. So if you're concerned about anyone, it's a good idea to reach out. There are some things that are less helpful when we have a conversation with someone who may be suffering from depression and anxiety. We want to avoid minimizing their feelings. So for those of us who have never experienced a major depression, we literally cannot imagine what it feels like. We also want to avoid trying to convince them that life is worth living. If a person is in a crisis, they are not thinking clearly. Philosophical debates about life being worth living tend not to be helpful. Nor is it helpful to point out all the good things you see in their life. You can save those conversations for when the crisis is past. You also want to avoid giving advice to fix it. If, again, thinking about other health conditions, if a person was having a heart attack, you wouldn't tell them that they should start exercising and that they should have been eating a healthier diet. If a person is in crisis, what they need is to be heard. So listen to their story and offer to help them find a health professional. Here's a few key things to remember when talking to your child. Take it seriously and don't wait to act. Be calm and be prepared to listen. I know that can sound very hard. It can be scary, but try to remain calm. Again, you can ask the direct question, have you ever felt so bad that you've had thoughts of suicide? This will not put the thoughts in their head if they aren't already thinking about it. You may want to identify a helping professional prior to having a talk, but what is most important is that you reassure your child that you are going to get help, and then don't wait to do it. You may also want to talk to others who interact with your child, such as teachers, coaches, friends, to see if they've noticed any changes in behavior. Remember, a stressor that may seem small to you is not small to your child. It's important to validate how your child is feeling about their current situation, even if you see it very differently. These are some steps you can take if your child reports thoughts of suicide or you suspect that your child might be feeling suicidal. Again, even though it's hard to do and you will probably be scared yourself, stay calm. Let them know that they did the right thing by thanking them for having the courage to tell you. Then reassure them you're going to get them help. Contact a mental health professional for an evaluation as soon as possible. Reduce the immediate stressors when possible. This may include things like having a sick day from school, missing a sport practice, etc. A good rule of thumb is to think of what expectations you would allow if your child had strep throat or a broken bone. Again, we're treating this just like any other health condition. And finally, take a moment to secure the lethal items in your home. Make sure that any firearms in your home are secured and stored separate from ammunition or temporarily held by another person until the crisis has passed. Also, lock up prescription medications or other items your child has mentioned they're planning to use. Make the environment reasonably safe for as long as possible. Sometimes the crisis point has been reached and scheduling an appointment a few days from now is not enough. If your child is in crisis, you need to take action immediately. You may be in crisis if your child has told you that they have planned out how they would kill themselves, if you discover a suicide note written by your child online or on paper, if your child tells you that they are hearing voices telling them to kill themselves, if you discover that your child has made a non-lethal attempt, or if you just feel in your gut that your child is not safe and you're afraid to leave them alone. At this point, the most reasonable action is to get help from a trained professional who can assess your child to help you figure out the next steps. You can take them to an emergency room or a mental health center. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The number there, 1-800-273-8255. We'll see this on another slide at the very end. I do recommend having this in your contact list. In July 2022, we will go to a 3-digit crisis line, 988. But in the meantime, we have this longer, kind of more complicated prevention line, and trying to recall this in a crisis can be challenging. You also don't want to leave your child alone and remove or secure anything that could be potentially fatal. By talking directly and compassionately with your child about their concerns and thoughts about suicide sends the message that you notice, you care, and that you're going to help them. In addition to helping your child, you can also become aware of risks that you notice in their friends. When asking about their friends, doing this separately, you may start by asking if they have any friends they have been worried about. Or you may comment on specific behaviors, such as, I noticed the last time John was over the house, he seemed kind of down. How do you think John has been feeling later? And later you may even ask more directly, do you think John may be feeling suicidal? If you get a report that your child's friend is feeling suicidal, you can contact the school or parents, but contact someone and tell them what you've learned. If it's an emergency, such as a suicide attempt in progress, call 911. Again, we have these 24/7 resources available, 1-800-273-TALK. You can also use the crisis text line. It's 741-741. This number is a little bit easier to remember. 741 is just up the very first column on your cell phone keypad. So you would just put that through twice. We have on this presentation to text the word talk. It really doesn't matter what words you text to them. If you've ever read articles that had this information, you'll see different words all the time. It doesn't matter, they will respond to whatever you text them. You can also call and text if there's not a crisis. If you want resources, you can call and say, I'm not in crisis, but I need to talk to someone. You can call for yourself, for your child, for someone else. There's even ways to do three-way calls if you're not in the same physical location as someone. This number, although it is a national hotline number, does connect you with your local crisis resource center. So if you're calling from Allegheny County with a 412 area code, it's going to connect you with Resolve. And remember, talking honestly with your child about suicide can save lives. All it takes is one caring, compassionate adult to take notice and start the conversation. So if you're looking for any more information, you can check out our website, afsp.org. We also have our campus walk coming up into about a week and a half now, which I know North Hills has a team for. So I'm sure April can give you more information if you want to get involved with their team. Together, we can create a culture that's smart about mental health, will save lives, and vastly improve the lives of many more. All right, I am going to stop sharing. I am done with the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, I know we're getting pretty close to the 8:30 timeline here, but if anyone has any questions before we log off, I'm happy to answer or try to answer. Okay, I don't see anything that came in on the chat. And I will promise you, like, I'm not usually this bad at Zoom and PowerPoint, so I do appreciate your patience with me as I navigated some of the technical difficulties.
That was wonderful, Emily. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The walk information is on the North Hills webpage, and you can register there if anyone's interested.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'll kind of linger on the Zoom site here for the next couple of minutes. So if anyone has a question that they didn't want to ask with everyone still logged in, I'll stay here for a couple of moments. Younger children.
You do have a question in the chat, Emily.
I just saw that. Jessica asked about advice for younger children. Younger children can be tough, and maybe April can chime in a little bit more on this than I can, since you said you worked in the middle school as well. With younger children, definitely focusing on mental health and resiliency is a nice way to go. Even with AFSP, we don't program around suicide prevention for younger children, but we do have programs for children aged 5 to 11. We actually just rolled this program out, and anyone actually can access this. So I'm going to put it in the chat. There's this dog called Gizmo, and there's this whole Gizmo's possum mental health adventure. And you can go on this website, and it talks about having like mental health plans for children. Again, we're looking around ages 5 to 11. So it helps these children of that age to identify coping strategies, stress management strategies, and to identify their quote unquote trusted adult. So if they were feeling, some way, who they would talk to. So yeah, we don't really get a whole lot into suicide prevention explicitly in that age group, but definitely resiliency.
Right, and I agree with you, Emily. I think it's focusing on feelings and emotions and noticing those changes and signs. So if you do see differences in your child in the younger ages, talking to them about their school counselor and who they can talk to, any trusted adult, and recognizing, you know, signs of depression and anxiety in adolescence. You know, not wanting to go outside and play, isolating themselves, being withdrawn, things like that. So seeing those changes and then just opening up the communication and really just asking them how they feel, if they feel different, things along those lines. And if you need, you know, any assistance with that, our elementary counselors are wonderful and can always ask your child to come in the office and just kind of talk. It doesn't have to be anything serious. It can just be an introduction and you can get their input.
Yes, thank you for that follow-up. And I just put this website in the chat for everyone. It's called, the website's Gizmo for mentalhealth.org. Gizmo's this little therapy dog. There's a book that anyone can order one free copy of, but you can also check out any of the other resources on the page. You can take a mental health pledge, both the adult and the child, and they'll send you like a little dog figurine or something like that. It's actually a really cute program. We just started presenting it. We had our first one, I think, last week. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you again for spending your Wednesday evening with me and for bearing with me on all my tech issues. You'd never believe that I do PowerPoints and videos on Zoom every day of my life, but I appreciate your patience. I'll stay here until people have logged off. That way, if there is any questions that anyone wanted to ask in private, you have a chance to do that.
Thank you so much, Emily. And just to let everyone know, our hope is that an educator from the foundation will come in the classrooms and talk. At least I'm the high school staff counselor, so our goal is to have them in the building next year. It's an in-class presentation, so they don't run this virtually for students. I was hoping to get that out, but they don't do it virtually for students. So it's an in-person program. So our goal is to have that in for next year in the fall, to have the foundation and to talk to the kids in person. So they would get this presentation.
Yeah, we would show that video that you watched and then have a discussion. We like to have our eyes on the younger folks when we're doing this kind of sensitive information. April, did you have any other questions about any of our programming or anything? Will that be high school, not middle school? Yeah, so Sherry, our program for that teen video that you just saw, we do that for ages 14 and above. AFSP is a national organization, so our national education department is working on some newer materials. So you can kind of sense there's that gap between 11 and 14. So the idea was, I think, this summer, at least later in the year, to have some more information. Your daughter is 13 in 7th grade. Okay.
So Sherry, we have a Stand Together group at the high school, but Mr. Ratnaval is starting a Stand Together group in the middle school, which means Stand Together is a group that their goal is to stop the stigma of mental health. And we train the students and they go into the classrooms and talk to the other students about mental health, depression, anxiety, suicide awareness. And that is started this year. So they will be getting in classroom lessons from their peers regarding, it won't be this detailed kind of presentation on suicide awareness and education, but they will definitely be getting, and Mr. Ratnavel already does that, educated and told of, who they can reach out to with regards to mental health.
And if we were doing it for a grade level like that, we wouldn't be checking ages or anything, you know, like 7th and 8th grades. I know we probably would get some 13-year-olds, some 14-year-olds. Like, we're not gonna be that nitpicky about the age thing. We just wouldn't be doing that video for, you know, say a 10 and 11-year-old.
So that's something we can discuss.
Yeah. Brenda, so it's really up to the district. You know, we get invited to come and do these presentations. All of our presentations are offered free of charge. So if you want to, you know, put a bug in the ear of their guidance department, you know, counseling department, administration, you know, we'd be happy to present there. Or if you have the name of someone, we can always reach out. You're welcome.